Hello artists! Welcome to the channel and welcome to this video in which we're going to be talking about the 10 mistakes which people make when they are new to drawing. Error number 1, pretty common, using school materials. Please do not use the school equipment of your little siblings to learn how to draw except if you have absolutely no other option. No other option. This stuff is really bad and it is seriously going to limit you. Even though you're not a great expert, even though you're just starting out, you have to have the possibility of improving, and with this material it's very difficult even to take the very first steps. Throw this stuff out because it's going to slow you down. You're going to think that you are the problem, that you are the one without the sufficient ability, when in reality it's your tools which are limiting you. Therefore, avoid school equipment if you can. Error number 2, using only one grip. And that is usually the writing grip. This one. This is normally the grip you use to write with. This applies less to digital media where there aren't many more options, but if you draw on traditional media, especially if you're just learning to draw, you should try a load of different grips so that you could use the one which suits you the best in each situation. The majority of people use the writing grip because that's the one they're most comfortable with and not because it's the most suitable. They feel comfortable just because it's the only one that they've used since they've learned how to write. You should ensure that when you use one grip or another, it's because it's the best one for each moment and not because you haven't dedicated enough time to learning how to use the other ones. Error number 3, comparing yourself with other people all the time. Now I know this one is difficult and that it's inevitable, but try not to do it. You shouldn't because you're going to have your own way of learning and your own rhythm of development, so comparing yourself to others doesn't make any sense. Sometimes you compare yourself to your colleagues or your friends and you can see that they are making faster progress, but you don't know if they're also going to tire out quicker or if they're going to give up. Of course you can have people to look up to and admire, but that in itself doesn't mean that you have to compare yourself directly to them. Those are two different things. So go at your own pace and compare yourself only with yourself. This is something you really have to do. Every 3 or 4 months, compare your own drawings of then and now so you can see how you've progressed. It's a really healthy practice. Error number 4, not copying other artists. You have to copy. You learn by copying. There's no harm in copying unless you're copying to plagiarize, which means claiming someone else's work as your own for economic gain. But if we're talking about learning, you have to follow in the footsteps of someone who learned before you. An engineer will use and leverage the knowledge developed by other engineers before him or her. No one these days develops such complex knowledge and skills from scratch. There's no need. So, copy other artists, analyze their works, and see what you could use to your advantage. Which brings us to error number 5, which is don't copy just through copying. Copy by analyzing what you're copying. How has this artist managed to get these particular results? What has he or she done better? How do they structure their work? We have to analyze all these things, and you have to learn from what you're doing and not just copy something because you like it and that's it. By copying, you will be absorbing deep knowledge from other people. But don't worry, in time you will end up developing your own unique style. The same thing happens in drawing as in writing. It doesn't matter that all children learn to write in the same way using exactly the same letters with the same patterns. Eventually, you will end up developing your own handwriting that will be distinguishable from anyone else's. Error number 6, not using references. This is something that happens to people all the time. Actually, it happened to me for a very long time, and it's a little absurd. You have to use references. If you can draw from memory, fantastic. But if you need a reference for a complicated pose or for a hand at a difficult angle, use references. Everyone has always drawn from references, and in fact, how can you paint a portrait without a reference? There are many people who have the feeling that if they use a reference and don't draw from memory all the time, that they are somehow bad artists. This attitude is a huge mistake. The quality of an artist is not measured according to whether he or she uses references. We should clarify a few things. The first is that there are people such as comic book artists who almost never use references, but that's because they have done the same poses of their characters so many times that they no longer need them, and also because they have such a deep knowledge of anatomy that they simply know how to do it. But that doesn't mean that they didn't use them when they were getting going, or that if at some point they came up against a complicated drawing and they wouldn't use them. It's okay. The other thing is that we are heavily influenced by what we see on social media. We see drawing wizards who do it from memory without making mistakes, but what we often don't see is what got left out of the edit of the video. Maybe off camera, there's a wall covered in photographs, or maybe the artist has attempted the drawing 100 times before. Don't believe everything you see on the internet. Error number 7, having a mistaken idea about what the actual process of drawing is like. When all of us start out in drawing, we believe we know how it's done. Drawing is often a counterintuitive activity. If we were all able to draw completely on instinct, there would be no need to learn. We believe that if we start to draw on one side of the figure, which we like the most, and if we do the little details first, because they are the most fun, then the drawing should turn out perfect. We don't want to do sketches first or start by drawing more general lines or waiting to have a good outline done which we can then add detail to, but that's not how it works. There's a whole process you have to follow, which works because it has been developed over centuries. But we find it boring and we resist it. Many times, even when we are paying for a class, we want to draw how we believe we should draw and not how they're trying to teach us to draw. And we don't get better. A friend told me that he managed to study in New York with his idol, with the artist he admired the most, but he saw zero progress. He even came to believe that he had nothing to offer. The reason was this. When his idol would explain something, my friend would say yes to everything, and then as soon as the teacher got back to talk to another student, my friend would continue doing the same thing he had always been doing without even realizing. He believed that that was just how you drew. But one day he thought to himself that if he wasn't improving and his teacher was his idol, maybe he had to do what this person was teaching him exactly as he was teaching it to him. As though by magic, everything began to fall into place. He felt like an idiot for all the time he had wasted. By the way, today, my friend is the best teacher and portraitist I know. You have to follow a working method. Drawing only on instinct usually does not work. Error number 8, setting out to draw and then not learn. This is the major mistake. When you apply yourself to drawing, it's not about making drawings on automatic pilot. It's not about trying to finish drawings. It's not about ending up with a drawing which you can hang on the wall. It's about learning. And you're going to achieve this through exercises which get more and more complicated and which put you more and more to the test. Finishing drawings is good, it's pleasant, and we like it. But if you're learning, it's going to be much more useful to you to make thousands of quick sketches, which will teach you to better understand the fundamentals of drawing than finishing drawings to an ultra-realistic level, which is more of a question of patience than it is of technique. Of course, this is one way of talking about it, and of course you need to learn thoroughly all of the steps of the process, right up to finishing a piece. But at the beginning, don't obsess about creating really polished, complete drawings. Instead, focus on challenging yourself with quick exercises. An example of which I've put on the channel a million times is of a soccer player who trains only by playing soccer games. Well, in the end, he's not going to be a very complete player. Yes, he's going to know how to play and how to perform, but he's going to lack stamina because he hasn't repeated certain exercises. He's going to lack strength because he hasn't gone to the gym, and he's not going to have a strong core which allows him to move in an agile way and to sidestep because he won't have done other types of parallel workouts which are also really important. So when you get to drawing, don't just draw, learn as well. Error number 9. This is the best, my favorite, confusing the end goal of the process with the process itself. Let me explain. Take Kim Jong-gi. You see him draw and he's a beast. He draws in ink straight away without prior sketches, and he creates an incredibly complex scene which most people would struggle to do, even by tracing, and he does it from memory without making a single mistake. Yes, but the thing is, he is Kim Jong-gi. And when you see that type of drawing, you have to understand that it is the consequence of having trained for a very long time. He himself says that he learned using block-ins, making outlines, and other kinds of things because that ability doesn't come naturally. What he does is the consequence of training, but the majority of people see how he draws and confuses it with the cause. In other words, they think, because he draws in that way, that is going to be the path to eventually draw like him. No. Imagine this example. You go for a session at the gym and there you see a huge guy who benches 200 kilos. You cannot think, if this guy lifts 200 kilos and he's gotten strong like that, I'm going to lift 200 kilos and I'll get super ripped. No. What you'll achieve is ending up on the local news. This guy got strong little by little. He started by lifting 10 kilos, then 20, then 30, and he progressed, and with time he got to 200. Do you get where I'm going with this? And error number 10, not correcting in good time. This one's really fun because I have to admit that it's happened to me for years, and when I say years, I mean many years. We have a great resistance to changing the things we put on paper. We don't like to correct, our brain doesn't want to invest energy in repeating something which is already done, and it resists in the form of frustration, laziness, and all the bad feelings it can make us feel. When I was starting out, I remember doing my first lines with loads of insecurity, which makes sense. Do you recognize that feeling of making lines to see if, with a bit of luck, they turn out like the thing you're trying to draw? Well, that was happening to me. The problem is that sometimes, even when I realized that it wasn't good, I resisted correcting it because of a mix of laziness, insecurity, and a fear of making things even worse. Tell me in the comments if this has happened to you. I am very interested to know it. And worst of all is that sometimes, as though in order to try to reassure myself and convince myself that it wasn't bad, and hoping that by some magic it might tidy itself up, I would reinforce it. And of course I ended up having some lines as thick as highways, and now I definitely had no way of correcting them even if I had wanted to. Also because when you start, you don't control the pressure well. You end up making the first lines too strong, and these are the lines which should eventually disappear or end up disguised during the process. Therefore, the best advice is to draw with great care and always have in mind that 90% of the time, the lines which you make at the start, you are going to have to correct. You, me, Kim Jong-gi, well, not Kim Jong-gi, but definitely the rest of us. And we'll do one more error as a bonus. Number 10.5. Having mistaken expectations. We idealize and romanticize certain pursuits a lot. When we see someone doing them, we think, it would be so incredible to do that. I would love so much to be able to do it like that. This is the mistaken idea of, if I like reading comics, I'm gonna like drawing comics. Well, perhaps not. Sometimes when you love comics, what attracts you is telling stories and not drawing them. But confuse those two things because the drawing is what pulls our attention the most because it's the main element of the communication in comics. However, seeing drawings is simply not the same as creating them. Drawing is very satisfying work, yes, but it's also work like any other work, which you will not always be crazy about doing and you will have to make yourself. It's very hard and it comes with a large dose of frustration, and not everybody is prepared to face up to it in a professional way. It's a common mistake to think that we like playing video games, therefore we'll also enjoy the work making video games, or if we like going out to clubs with our friends, then our future should be working as a waiter. No. Many people think that drawing must be something very relaxing, because they see someone drawing who has loads of experience and they believe everything comes really easily for him or her, almost without effort. But they are ignoring the thousands of hours of learning, the frustration, the struggling with yourself to learn, and the powerlessness of not being able to draw a thing which you have in front of you, which is something which causes many of us, when we start out, long periods of frustration. Drawing is a beautiful thing and it can be very satisfying, but it's only relaxing when you truly don't mind about the results or when you know a lot and things come out as you want them. But meanwhile, it's a process of constant struggle against frustration. Learning to draw is exactly that, struggling against your own frustration until you beat it without having given up before. So there it is. I'll say goodbye to you guys with a big hug and I'll see you here on the channel for the next video.